Hey, it's Al Angelo from A Plus Racing. Yes, it's summertime and I don't have any kids anymore, so I'm going to be kind of sporadic with the videos, but I'll try to get down here at the shop and do them as frequently as I possibly can. I'm also building a new A Plus Racing shop at my house, and so they're supposed to be done with that in a month, and we can start filming over there too, okay? Getting a lot of requests for all kinds of videos, and I'm still waiting for the car to come back from the cage on our Econo build, which I'm supposed to pick up next week. They're done, but I got to drive to the Bay Area and pick up that car. So I've had several requests to do a video on how do I prepare the car before a race, okay? So I've got a car here that used to be an automatic and I swapped it to a stick, and we talked about that in the last video. And so I'm going to go over what I look for when I'm going over the car, okay? I don't have a PDF file with it listed out. I kind of just go into the car and start looking, but maybe it's a good idea I make a list and make it available to you, and I'll see if I can get somebody on that. And when I mean somebody not me, okay? Yeah, somebody else, all right? Okay, so I got the car up in the air, and then we're gonna go ahead and look at everything underneath, and then I'm gonna pull off a wheel and show you what I look for on the brakes, and then we'll go inside the car and under the hood, all right? So without that, let's go. Okay, so I got a 1994 Miata here. This car went to the 25-hour 5 or 6, 8 times. Really great car. It was an automatic. I did a manual swap on it. As I told you, I had to replace the entire wiring harness to get it to run. And so we've been racing this car for years. Here's a weird thing about this car. So we used to get a pro-built motor for this car every 25-hour from a buddy, and they always kept blowing up. So we always had problems. Well, finally I built one. I said, just let me build it. I'm going to build it. So I built the engine in this car. And this car went on to podium 3 25 hours with that same engine. And that same engine is in here and has been in here racing all along for another 4 more seasons, okay? I don't know what's holding it together. And here's the crazy thing about it. The first time I took the car down, had a dyno. No restrictor plate for 94. This is a good candidate. No restrictor plate, has to weigh 2,400 pounds. Is that it made like 126 horsepower. Okay, not bad. Race 25-hour, come back next year, makes 130 horsepower. Wow, that's even better. This is great. The engine got broken, everything's fine. Come back the next year to race 25-hour, makes 131. Come back the next year, it makes 133. Okay, it's probably up to 160 horsepower by now. We haven't done anything to it. I'd love to refresh it, but at one point the spark plug popped out, and we blew a plug out of it, and I helicoiled it, and I'm afraid to take the damn thing apart now. So we're just running it until it dies, and it's still going. But anyhow, let's check this car out. All right, so I got the car up in the air, and one of the first things I want to do is I want to check the tires to see if they have any flat spots in them. Now, let me teach you a little bit about tires. And on this tire here, you can barely see it, but you see this little spot right there? That is a tread depth indicator. When you get below that, you're below 2/32. So all of this is below 2/32. There's one right here, there's one right there, there's one right there, there's one right here, okay? And I can see we got a little bit of peel right here on the edge of the tire. This edge is getting pretty close to being corded. So this would be a good candidate to change this tire. I wouldn't probably run that one in a race. All right. And then if we go to this one here, I can see we got a good dimple there. We got a good dimple there. And so when I see that we have a lot of tread in the middle and not so much on the outside, that kind of tells me we've been running this tire a little low on pressure. So, you know, I usually like to start these tires out at 24 pounds and then come off the track at around 31, okay? So no more than 31. 30, 31 is good. So that one looks okay. All right, so when I look at this one, if your tires are looking like this, where you've picked up a lot of slag off the racetrack, that means that you're not driving the line. You're not in the groove. This is rubber that came off of other people's tires and is sitting on the edge of the racetrack. And when your tires get hot and you roll over it, it sticks it to this tire. So that a good driver could burn that off in a couple of laps. But if you're starting to get a lot of buildup, that tells me a little bit about your driving habit and that you need to correct your line. When we look at the dimples, we see we got plenty of dimples on here. So this tire looks in pretty good shape. You know, I'm looking for flat spots. Well, there's a a little bit of a flat spot right there, not too overly bad. And the rest of this tire looks pretty good, but as you can see, it's definitely got some trash stuck to it. All right, we come over to this tire, and I'm looking at it once again. We still got a little bit of trash on here. It's a little worn down. I'm seeing just the edge here peeling off. So this would probably be a good tire to replace. All right. Okay, so while I'm back here, I like to hit the exhaust and make sure that the exhaust isn't hitting anywhere. Now what you do here, and it's pretty common, is you're hearing, see that? That's really common that these things do that. In a race car, I can't hear it with a helmet on. But you can see right here where it broke off. And so you could just weld that up, or you could take this shield off. All right. But I see people on Facebook all the time are like, I hear some rattling sound underneath. It's a good chance it's probably this. All right, we'll go back to here. So I hit the exhaust, make sure that everything looks tight, that it's not hitting on anything. The other thing too is we break a lot of these rubber snubbers right here. So as you can see, one of our tricks, you're subscribing, right? Make sure you subscribe because I'm giving you all my secrets. Okay, back up there. All right. So one of our tricks is to go ahead and wrap the isolating bushing up with a hose clamp and then zip tie it so it doesn't slide off. Yeah, you know that's an awesome trick. And so long as this isn't hitting anything, we're pretty good. So sometimes they hit right here, and that's a pretty common place for them to hit. Then they actually wear a hole in it, or if they're dragging too low. I built this exhaust quite a few years ago. It's still holding up. This is probably the first one I ever built. And we make a little turn here. It's burnt a little bit of the muffler. I could have probably designed it a little better. So I'm looking at that. If I see large clumps of the old rubber, you know, from the track, I take that off. I grab the tire right here and I try to push it out and in. So I'm trying to move it like this, okay? And what I'm checking for is wheel bearing play, all right? If I have any play at all, like that, the hub is going bad and I need to replace the hub, okay? Not the whole hub, but maybe the bearing, all right? I usually just replace the bearings, and that's for another video. All right, so I'm going to check this one here. I grab it here, I push out, I pull in. This one's nice and tight, okay? I'm looking for any loose bolts. You know, these break sometimes, these end links, the bolts fall out. These look good. You can see my marks are still fairly lined up here. That's where I had set the alignment. So this, I think we just aligned this car, so we need to remark this one and that one. But as I'm looking at it, it all looks pretty good. I like to check those. So what I'll do is I grab a couple of 17 millimeter wrenches. And I just make sure that these are super tight. As tight as I can get them. Because they do move. We can see that these are pretty tight. I'm using 2 wrenches so I don't accidentally spin it out of alignment. Okay, those look pretty good. You know, I can check my lower control arm. Those should be really tight. They are. Now these 2 right here, these fall out from time to time. I put them in with an impact gun as tight as I can get them. Okay, see, look, that one's kind of loose. So the other day at Laguna, I had a customer driving a car, says he's hearing this god-awful scraping sound, and then all of a sudden there was a huge bang and it stopped making the scraping sound. And so it took us a while to figure it out, but this bolt had fallen out, was dragging on the ground. He hit a bump, the bolt fell out farther, then bent and broke off and shot out the back of the track. So, and then shortly after that he wrecked the car. But yeah, you know who you are, Kirk. Anyways, so watch those to make sure they don't fall out. You'll see some of these arms that'll have a little ramp right there to keep you from hitting that on stuff. Those are kind of cool to have. All right, so these are tight. I've checked these. I'm just looking for anything that looks abnormal, you know, making sure that everything looks right. You know, I don't see anything falling off or broken. And then let's go ahead and check that diff fluid. So this is the drain for the diff, and this is to check it. So I'm going to pull that one off, and I use a 6-point, 15/16 socket. All right.
Was that a 6-point?
That was a 6-point, not to be confused with the 12-point or a big wrench, because you'll just round this off. All right. So that was plenty tight enough. All right, don't go crazy tightening that thing up. Okay, so I should be able to take this out. I know I got my arm in the way, but it's a very muscular arm. Okay, so I got it out. It's not pouring out, which is okay. All right, if it poured out, I know it's full. All right, because it's supposed to be up to this level here. So I'm just going to stick my dipstick in there. Okay, and I'm going to bend down my finger down there, and I'm going to pull out. And you see how I got a drip on it? It's pretty black. All right, so this is a pretty good candidate to go ahead and change the fluid, which we'll probably do at another time. All right, so before we go out, we're going to have to change the fluid in this. It's merely taking this plug out, draining it, filling it, putting the plug back in, filling it up to here, then put the plug back on. So when you tighten up this plug, man, don't go crazy. I've never seen one fall out. That's it, okay? Otherwise, they round off pretty easy. Make sure you use a good quality 90 weight or 75, 90 or something like that. Use a good quality fluid in here. Whatever you do, don't use P. I can tell you right off the bat that it'll only go 4 laps. That car over there is the little pisser. For some reason, the kid's got a pee jug and accidentally put it in the rear end of there. I can tell you with pure pee in there, it'll only make 4 laps, okay? And then it burns up and it's a stench you've never smelled before. All right, so that looks good. We're going to have to change that fluid out. But I like what I'm seeing back here, that everything looks pretty solid. The bumper's not falling off. The tow hooks look tight, okay? All right, let's move forward. So I'm going to grab a 14 millimeter wrench. It's sometimes a good idea to check these too, just to make sure that they're tight. I can see these are pretty rusty, so they've been on there a long time. They're pretty tight, but they do come loose. The gaskets blow out, and then people complain, I smell exhaust smell, and I feel dizzy. Yeah, just drive the car. But anyhow, so yeah, sometimes you have to replace those gaskets in there. This one looks okay. All right, so right here is our transmission fluid level. You get a good shot of that one, Mike?
Yep, got
all right.
Finger, got it.
So I'm using the open end 14. Don't use a 9/16, okay? 9/16 is a little bigger, and it's really easy to round these off. And you don't have to tighten the crap out of it. They don't ever fall out. Okay. So like the differential, I'm going to pull it out, and if fluid runs out, it's full. Okay, so there it is. Fluid's running out, and it's good and clear. All right, so that looks good. So we're just going to put that right back on. I don't have to use my pinky dipstick. And we're just going to tighten that up. Now, when I go to tighten this up, you're going to see I'm not going to go wacky and hang from it because it doesn't need to be that tight. That's about it. Okay, that's it. All right, so looking at the front, I'm going to grab my 17 again. And I'm going to be checking these cams to make sure that they are tight. Okay. That looks good. That looks good. That's good. That one looks good. I'm looking from the back side here at the motor mounts right here. I'm looking here to see if I see them broken, and I don't see any broken motor mounts on this car, so that looks pretty good. We just checked all the cams. Those look pretty good. All right, so let's check the wheel bearings on this car. So we're going to check the fronts, and once again, I'm going to grab it right here, okay? And I'm going to push out and pull in. And if I feel any play here at all, that tells me that the hub bearing is going bad. That one feels pretty tight. All right, so I'm going to go to this side over here. Oh, guess what? Can you see that wheel moving?
Yeah.
Can you see it, Mike?
Yeah.
All right, so we got a problem over here. All right, so now we got to figure out what it is. So I want to get this to where you might be able to see it. Let me get some light and check it out. I got a light.
I'm going to get from the front.
And then, yeah, maybe. Does this thing have a magnet?
No, that was not a magnet. Oh, yeah. He's got your magnet light right over there, Al, if you need it.
I think that'll do it. Let me see.
Yeah.
Okay, I see it. Yeah, Mike, come on up here in the front, see if you can get it.
I think I saw
I think I see the ball joint moving. So it's not the hub bearing on this one. I think it's that ball joint.
Yep.
Yep. I can just see this ball joint moving back and forth. So this car needs a ball joint. All right. So when you do have play like that, you are checking everything in this axis. So, and in this case, that's a bad ball joint. So we'll have to replace that ball joint. Okay. Another one that I do is I take and I push out right here. So I'm at the 3 o'clock position and I push out and I pull in. Okay. Push out and pull in. And I try to do 3 10 sets of reps. I'm just kidding. All right. And so I do, what I'm checking there is I'm checking the outer tie rod ends and the inner tie rod ends. If I was to feel play in here where I pushed out and pulled in and there was play, then I would grab it and I would try to see, is it the tie rod end, the outer tie rod end, or is it the boot moving back and forth and it's the inner tie rod end? So I'm looking for those, okay? So this one's good and tight, so there's nothing wrong with the tie rod ends on it. It's in pretty good shape. Okay, shock absorbers. I can look to see if there's oil leaking out the top of them. So I can see this shock is still clean and yellow. And this one, oops, this one's clean and yellow. So I don't see any oil leaking out of those ones. I come back here. That one looks pretty clean right there. I don't see any oil leaking out. And then this one right here, that one looks really clean. I got to tell you, on the new Penske's, they seem like they blow out after a short period of time. I haven't seen that problem with the Bilsteins, but with the Penske's, sometimes I'm only getting a year out of them. So you got to watch for that. If they get blown out, you got to send them out and have them rebuild, or you got to replace them. So everything underneath here looks pretty good. This is our transponder right here. So this is what counts the lap times when you go around track. This is a hardwired one. And so it stays with the car. It looks like the key must be left on because it's still on. But anyhow, so sometimes we put them there. Sometimes we put them up here in the front. I'm glad this one doesn't have 2 because that's always confusing. But anyhow, so this kind of concludes my inspection of under the car. So I'm going to go ahead and pull a couple of wheels off, and then we're going to take a look at the brakes, and we'll go from there. All right, so I'll be right back. Okay. I got the wheels off the car, and I want to look at the brakes. And so when I turn the rotor here, you can see the rotor spinning right there on the side. And the part that's next to it right in here that I'm marking up right here, that is the brake pad lining. That's how much lining is left. This part out here next to the lining that I'm marking right now is the brake line backing plate, okay? So anytime that the brake lining gets close to the thickness of that backing plate, it's time to start thinking about brakes. This has plenty of brakes, so a couple, 2 or 3 weekends, easy. And then, Mike, if you can come all the way around this side, I'm going to do the same thing right here, okay? So this is the brake lining right there, okay? And that's the backing plate right there. So as you can see from right here, that there is plenty of brake lining on this car. So I would check both sides, but it looks like the front brakes, they're like brand new on this. So let's go take a look at the rears. Now, one thing I'm noticing on the rear right here, I got a little bit of a lip here, so I can feel it and see it. So these rotors probably been on there a while, and these pads are pretty aggressive, and they're just starting to wear down that rotor. So probably the next time we put pads on this, we're going to have to replace the rotor. All right, so on this one right here, I'm looking at this area right here is the brake lining, and this is the backing plate. And as you can see, that brake lining is really, really thick. And this one is here. It's got a pretty far way of going there. So I can look on the inside. It's kind of a lot harder, Mike. I don't know if you can get in here. Let's swap. If you can get in there. And I can see it in here, okay? So I'll turn the rotor, and you know, I can see the slot where the brake pads are at, and so we've got tons of brakes on this. All right, looking in here again, you know, I look at the brake lines themselves to make sure they're in good shape. Once again, I don't see anything leaking from the shock. You know, the bushing looks good. You know, I can go back to the front and take a gander up there again. So looking at this shock, that looks good. I see a oh no, it's got a bolt there. Some of these things always get broken. That looks good. These look good. This rotor's in pretty good shape. The brake line's in good shape. I seen somebody on Facebook the other day complaining about that the wheels scuffing up there. That's really common on Spec Miata. I mean, They pretty much all do that. So upper control arm bushings right here on both sides look good. Lower control arm bushings down here, right here, and on this back side over here, they look pretty good. So those look good. So I think everything, you know, here looks pretty decent. Let's go ahead and lower it down and look under the hood. So we won't take a break. I'll just lower it. But this rack does lower kind of slow. So it's been a good car, you know. We've had it in rotation for, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 years now. So it's been a great car. If I was doing a beginning of the racing season inspection on this, I'd probably be repacking the front wheel bearings on it and even possibly changing the rear bearings on the hubs in the rear. I'd also be draining the coolant and refilling that, of course doing an oil change, probably servicing the transmission and servicing the differential. All right, so we can look up here, and so here's my coolant recovery bottle. So I'm going to look to make sure this is full. Now I see it's empty, all right, so there's like nothing in it. So I'm going to leave this undone like that, so that tells me I need to top that off. Okay. When taking the radiator cap off, I know I haven't ran this car, we haven't driven it in a while, but I always like to check the upper radiator hose to see if there's any pressure on there. All right, so like I tell the kids in my class, if I make a fist with this hand and I feel that like that, you feel how tense that muscle is. If I feel that on the upper radiator hose, that tells me that it's under pressure. And if I uncork this, it's gonna blow off. All right. So if I put my hand kind of limp and I feel it, I can squish it. If it feels like that, that means it's not under pressure. All right. So I'm safe to go ahead and undo this. So I can either check it right here, which is hard to get to, but you can also see the hose right there. There's the lower radiator hose right there. So I can merely come in here and squeeze it, and I can tell it's not under pressure. So I can go ahead and push down on the cap and then pull it off. So I can see that it's fairly full of water, and we only use water, and we're not allowed to use antifreeze. You can use, you know, water wetter from Redline if you want. I guess it works okay, but that needs to be topped off with water. So this looks pretty good. All right, so that looks good. If it was the beginning of the season, I'd be replacing the spark plug wires and the spark plugs. Okay, make sure you get the right order. If you've got a 1.6 car, it's very common for these to pop off while you're out on the track. And so what we usually do is we zip tie them down so that they don't pop off, because we've had that happen numerous times. And I hear that happening all the time. All right, so I'm going to check the engine oil. And the engine oil is full, but it is a little bit dark. So we should probably go ahead and change the oil on this car before we take it back out. I want you to notice this extra thick ground wire that I put on them right here. One time I had one where we got in an accident. We fixed the car, took it back out, but it was the motor mount was broken, and every time that this thing undid, when the engine jumped up and this came unplugged, the engine died. It took us hours to figure that out. And then when we'd let off the gas, or when the engine would die, the wire would fall right back into the connector and it would start right back up again. But the minute we gave it gas, it would pull out and die. So I make these longer and add a heavier gauge ground wire so that I don't have that problem anymore. So I'm avoiding that problem. It'd be a good idea to take the air cleaner out and blow it out. On the race cars, we're only allowed to use a certain air cleaner, and so we could clean that out. We also use the oil one where we clean it and then we re-oil it. One thing underneath the hood of this car I want to show you. This is very unique. You see this relay right here? Some of you guys have questioned, it's like, how come my main relay goes bad every now and then the car doesn't start? You know, we've had the same problem with this car. Ever since this car got in an accident with a Porsche in the 25 hour, it blows this relay out about every 10 or 12 hours. So what I did is, one of the relays, I can't figure out why it's overheating. Why is this relay getting so hot and then it stops working? So on one of them, I took it and I drilled the cover out and I put holes in it, and it made it last longer. And then it still popped. So then what I did is I put another one in here and I took the cover completely off, all right, as you can see. And since then, and I'm going to knock on Mike's head. since then, knock on wood, we've never replaced the main relay on this car since, all right? The next step is to take the cover and pick a little scoop out of it with a blower fan, you know, and we can boost it. You know, we might have to boost it. So that's the next step if it blows out again. So yeah, so that's why that's like that. All right. Okay. So I've pretty much given you all of the tips on what I kind of look for before we go to the track, and even some of them that what I look for when we're doing a full service. Oh, one other thing too, the alternator belt down here. I always like to check to make sure that the belt is tight, and this one is tight. And I like to make sure that the bolts that hold the alternator in place are tight and are there, because they seem to fall off from time to time. This one looks good. So I think we got a couple of fluid changes on this car, and we're going to be solid. And we're going to take this back out to the track next week and give it a spin. All right? Hey, I hope that answered your questions. And I'm glad that you guys are chiming in and you're thinking of these things, and this one was for you. I think the gentleman's name was Dunlap on a subscriber. He asked again about having this done, and I've been asked a lot of times, so I decided to do that today. All right? I'm going to finish this up, and I got to get to the racetrack, and maybe I'll see you at the racetrack. Have a great day.